How do you stay disciplined without it becoming obsessive, restrictive, or disordered? This is a question that I get asked all of the time from clients. So I wanted to talk about it a little bit with you guys today. I know a lot of you guys listening to this aren't new to the health space. You've been in this for some time. And maybe you started in the stereotypical era of like food rules, extreme restriction, spending hours at the gym, and it was quite toxic to your physical and mental health, and eventually backfired on you to the point where like your pendulum kind of swung to the other direction and you started to search for balance and heal your relationship with food and your body, which totally served you for a season. But now you're in this position where you do have fitness and physique goals again. You're craving more results. You're craving to challenge yourself, to hold yourself to a higher standard with your habits and your nutrition and your workouts. And yet there's this little part of you in the back of your head that's scared to do that again because you don't want to go back to the era where it was super toxic and unhealthy and restrictive. And you're like, how do I reintroduce this level of like discipline and consistency and effort without it taking over my entire life? And that is what this episode is all about. It's not about building discipline because you already have it. It's about relearning how to use discipline as a form of self-respect instead of punishment. And I just want you to like sit with that idea for a second, because I think a lot of the women listening to this, high achievers, driven, all or nothing women who have found this podcast, like that's the actual issue. It's not willpower. It's not consistency. It's not, some character flaw that you always self-sabotage. The problem is the direction you took your discipline was wrong, was misaligned. And when the direction is wrong, discipline then feels like something you're suffering through instead of something that's actually like serving you. I defined discipline as aligning your daily actions with what you genuinely value. Like that's it. That is the whole thing. Not what you've been told to value, not what looks dedicated on Instagram, not the standard that you picked up from some program or person or a season of your life that no longer applies to where you are now. It's aligning your actions with what you actually value. Because when these two things are misaligned, when your actions are pointing in one direction and your values are somewhere else entirely, that's where discipline starts to feel like disconnection. That's where it starts to feel like punishment and feel like you're just like constantly white-knuckling your way through everything. And I know this from my own personal experience that when something feels hard, my instinct is to just try harder, push harder, do more, grind my way through. That's the discipline that lives in my identity. Instead of taking a step back and figuring out if what I was doing was even aligned with what I was actually trying to achieve or wanted in the first place. That is a different kind of discipline. Now, I do believe 100% that your goals require sacrifice. They require discomfort. They require you doing things that you don't feel like doing and holding yourself to a higher standard. That is real. And I'm not going to soften that. But at the same time, I also believe that the sacrifices that you make should not be costing you your health, your joy, your values, or your ability to actually enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, enjoy becoming who you want to be. Both of those things can be true at the same time. Making sacrifices, and those sacrifices not abandoning your own desires, values, goals, identity. Most people are only operating on one side of the equation, where either everything should be feeling hard or everything should be feeling easy. And that's just not true. That's not how real success is built. So before anything else, before we dive into today's episode, that's the question underneath that I want you to really reflect on is, what are you actually disciplined towards? And is that genuinely what you value? Now, let me give you an example of what this like actually tangibly looks like. I want to take you back to me in 2021, because this is when I was really living the wrong version of discipline on full volume. I had just done my bikini competition. I followed the plan perfectly. I hit every macro. I showed up in every season. I did it all, the whole thing to a T. And from the outside, I was the picture of discipline. And in a lot of ways, that is true. I showed up every single day. I did not deviate from the plan. I was consistent in a way that most people never are. But then the competition ended and slowly everything started falling apart. I didn't have my period. I hadn't had my cycle for years. I was bloated constantly to the point where like I could barely even fit into my jeans anymore, which felt kind of insane because I was so healthy. I was eating so healthy. I thought I was doing everything right, but I started gaining weight. I started feeling more inflamed. I was exhausted in a way that sleep wasn't touching, that was now impacting my ability to show up in my business in the way that I wanted, and was impacting the quality of my relationship, where I was irritable and really like no real fun to be around. So I knew something was wrong. I could feel it. And my response was to look for what else I could control. Not to question the approach that I was taking, not to ask whether the expectations that I had been holding myself to were actually serving my body. My first instinct was to assume that I wasn't being disciplined enough, that I was doing something wrong, that my body was the problem, not the plan. My body was sending me every signal that it had that this isn't working, something needs to change, and I interpreted all of it as a reason to grip tighter, to push my body harder, to restrict more, to do more cardio. And it took a long time to see that clearly. And it really took a slow and uncomfortable realization that what I had been doing was not health in the first place. It was a set of standard and rules that I had inherited from diet culture, from the fitness industry, from comparison to other women's journeys, that I needed to look a certain way. I had been disciplined towards an aesthetic ideal that had nothing to do with my health or how I actually felt or what I actually valued or the leader that I wanted to be or the woman that I wanted to be or what my body actually needed. And I want to be careful here, okay, because I'm not telling you not to want to look a certain way or that wanting to look a certain way is wrong. Like wanting to be lean, wanting to feel confident in your body, liking what you see in the mirror, that is valid, and I will defend that till the day that I die. And I will work for that until the day that I die. But again, it cannot come at the expense of your genuine values, which to me is health, is the woman that I want to be. And when my pursuit of leanness, skinniness, shrinking myself became a detriment to those things, to my energy, to my libido, to my cycle, to my fertility, to my digestion, to my relationship, that's when it was big red flags for me. The truth is, the truth about aesthetic discipline that's driven by aesthetics, is that the standards are always external by definition. Like you're always measuring yourself up against something outside of yourself, a number, a look, a comparison, which means the discipline that's required to get there will always feel like control rather than care, because it is control. You're controlling your body toward an external standard, not actually caring for it towards internal health. Which looked like training when my body was exhausted because the plan said to train, eating less even when I was hungry because the numbers said that I had hit my limit, ignoring every signal that my body sent because signals weren't a part of the program. That just was not aligned with my real values of health. And so there's this second flavor of discipline that I really want to open your eyes up to that is oriented around actual health and healing. And this is where I am now. And I'll be honest with you, this version is harder. Not because it requires more sacrifice in the traditional sense, but because the results of this kind of discipline are invisible for a long period of time. And the actions that it requires run completely counter to everything that fitness culture has conditioned you to believe about what discipline actually looks like. There is nothing glamorous about being disciplined around your health. Nobody celebrates a woman who is eating more carbs, who's taking extra rest days, who is letting her body quietly, recalibrate and rebalance for 6 months. There's no before and after for that. There's no highlight reel. There's very minimal visible proof that you're doing the work. But this is the kind of discipline that produces something that actually lasts, that's long term, that's built around caring for your body, not controlling it. Healing is not a discipline that is soft. It's healing discipline is not soft. It's not passive. It's not just listen to your body as an excuse to do whatever you feel like on a given day. It requires just as much consistency and commitment as any other form of discipline that you've practiced up until now. It just looks completely different, and it goes against the grain in ways that are genuinely uncomfortable for you. So what that has looked like for me specifically is eating more when my brain tells me to stop. This is probably the hardest one for most of my clients. When you spent years, even subtly in a restrictive mindset, eating more feels wrong. It feels like you're losing control. Your brain is going to tell you that you don't need it, that you're overdoing it, that it's going to backfire. But doing it anyway, consistently, because you understand that this is what your metabolism needs to fuel, to actually function, that is discipline. It just doesn't look like it from the outside. From the outside, it looks like you're eating. From the inside, it's one of the hardest things that most of my clients ever have to do consistently until you start reaping the benefits. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I ever ate as little as I did. Another thing that this looked like for me is reducing exercise when everything in me wants to push harder. I genuinely love working out. I love pushing myself. I love pushing my body. So pulling back, like taking the extra rest days, choosing to walk over a hard training session, saying no to a workout, especially when my boyfriend is going and working out, because I know that my body needs recovery, that requires more discipline for me than showing up ever did. Because showing up is easy when you're wired to push yourself, when you're wired for growth and for progress. Stopping when you know that you should, even when your brain is screaming that you're going to fall behind or you're going to lose progress, that takes a different degree of self-control. The kind of self-control that's not glamorous or celebrated by any means. Another example is sleeping instead of being productive. This one hits differently for a lot of my high-achieving women. Sleep is when your body can actually regulate. It can regulate cortisol, it produces hormones, it repairs tissues, it resets your metabolism. It's not lazy to sleep. It is not optional if healing is actually the goal for you. But choosing to sleep over do another hour of work or another hour of scrolling on your phone or another hour of anything that feels more useful than just lying down, sitting still, doing nothing requires, again, consistent and active choice every single night. That is discipline. Or trusting the process when there are no visible results. This might be the most underrated one. When you are healing, your body is doing an enormous amount of work internally that has nothing to do with what the scale says or what you see in the mirror. Your hormones are recalibrating, your gut is restoring, your nervous system is coming down from a chronic state of stress. None of that is really visible on the outside. And staying the course when you can't see those results, when your brain is telling you that it's not working, when you're tempted to go back to the old approach, or you're tempted to push yourself to do more because it doesn't feel like you're doing enough, that requires a discipline that truthfully most people don't really ever develop, because most people will quit before they ever get there. So there are these very two different types of discipline, and I think at the root of what actually separates these two kinds of discipline, the one kind that is really revolved around aesthetics, the other kind that's more so revolved around genuine, deeper health, one comes from fear, the other comes from self-worth. And when I look back at my bikini competition era, honestly, that discipline was very fear-based. Fear of what would happen if I stopped, fear of losing control of my body, fear of what it would mean if I, ate more and loosened my grip or gained weight. The discipline was not coming from a place of caring for myself. It was coming from a place of not really trusting myself, not trusting my body, believing that even if I let go slightly, everything would fall apart. I would gain a ton of weight. And that's the thing about fear-based discipline, is it has to be maintained perfectly. There's no rest inside of it. There's no satisfaction that you get from it. You hit a goal, and instead of feeling proud, you feel terrified of, oh my gosh, what if I lose this? Is this actually enough? What's next? So you grip tighter, you add more rules, you push yourself harder, you raise the standard again, because discipline was never really about the goal. It was about managing the fear underneath of that goal. And that is an exhausting way to go about a health journey. That has nothing to do with physical effort. It is the mental and emotional exhaustion of that. You could be doing everything relatively moderately and still feel completely depleted because you're operating from fear every single day. And that drains you in a way that rest alone can't fix. Versus self-worth based discipline feels completely differently. It's not, I have to do this or something bad will happen. It's, I want to do this because I actually care about how I feel, because I respect my body enough to fuel it, because I value my health enough to protect it. The action may look somewhat identical on the outside, eating well, moving consistently, getting enough sleep, but the internal experience is nothing like the fear-based version. And here's what I would say is the most important difference of these two types of discipline is that self-worth based discipline, it doesn't fall apart when life gets hard. Fear-based discipline is fragile. One bad week, one missed workout, one meal that wasn't on plan, and the whole thing collapses. It is the all or nothing cycle because it was held together by anxiety, not about alignment with what you genuinely value. Versus self-worth based discipline, it is adaptive. It is consistent without being perfect. It can bend without breaking because it's about consistently showing up for yourself forever. It's not about some quick fix or some immediate results, or it doesn't require perfection. It just requires you believing that you're worthy of continuously showing up regardless of the external results or validation that is coming from that. And that's really the shift. Not from undisciplined to discipline, but from fear to self-worth. From controlling your body because you don't trust it to caring for your body because you respect it. And that's what really changes everything about what discipline looks like and really what it feels like in your day-to-day life when you actually practice it. So what I want you to take away is that the women that I work with don't come to me lacking discipline. They come to me with more discipline, frankly, than most people will ever have. What they're missing is the direction that their discipline is being executed within. They're missing a way of channeling all of that drive towards something that they actually value. And if discipline has been feeling like punishment, you're exhausted, you're resentful, you're white-knuckling your way through, constantly starting over every other Monday, the answer is not for you to try harder. The answer is for you to get honest about what you're actually disciplined toward and whether that generally reflects where you're trying to get to. Because discipline in service of your actual health, your actual values, your actual life does not feel like restriction. It feels like integrity. It feels like finally moving in the direction that makes sense, that's helping you become the woman that you want to be and create the life that you want to have. So if you're in a healing season right now, you're doing the unglamorous, invisible, go against everything that you've ever been taught version of this, I see you. That is discipline. That discipline is real. If you're scared to go into that healing season because you don't want to lose your discipline, I promise you it is way harder than you think it is. And it really does count. It really does set the foundation for, again, building a life that actually feels successful, fulfilling, and healthy for you. Something that actually lasts. So I hope that this episode, this little chit chat was helpful for you guys. I know that it's a big, big topic that I explore and dive deeper into with all of my clients, of understanding what fears are driving some of their behaviors and really starting to unpack that and realign those behaviors towards what they actually value and where they're trying to get to and what their body needs right now in this season of their journey. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you in the next episode. Bye.